They're charged, booked, and ready for arraignment. Of course, we're talking about the 19 defendants in the Fulton County District Attorney's 41-count criminal racketeering case. They're heading to trial. The prologue is over. Chapter 1 set to begin. So what exactly does that look like? What happens next? DA Fani Willis has asked the court to hold arraignments during the week of September 5th. That's right after Labor Day. That'll be, for all of them, their first formal appearance before a judge. It will open the floodgates for pretrial motions and potentially fights over the discovery process. But we should take a moment to make sure we don't get ahead of ourselves. In the here and now, there's still so much to consider. For instance, beyond what each defendant will have to answer for, there's a much broader universe of unknown. Do they stick together? This is a RICO case, after all, bound only by a shared status of alleged criminality. Could one of the defendants shake up the status quo and turn on the others? We don't know the answer to that question, but yet very apparent cracks in the foundation today, suggesting maybe they're not all on the same page. In a new court filing, one of the co-defendants, Georgia Republican Sean Still, argues this, that the fake electors met at Donald Trump's, quote, direction to sign false papers claiming they were the legitimate presidential electors. We'll keep an eye on some of those lesser-known players for you, but don't lose sight of any of the big fish either today, names we knew before the indictment was ever handed down. People like ex-Chief of Staff Mark Meadows and former DOJ official Jeffrey Clark. They're two of at least 5 people who are now seeking to have their cases moved from state court to federal court. And so next week, it'll be like a mini trial, the trial before the trial, if you will, as DA Willis will seek to retain control of those prosecutions. She's issued subpoenas in what may be a preview of the trial at hand. And so begins the effort in Georgia to hold the disgraced ex-president and his henchmen and women accountable for their alleged crimes. That is where we start the hour with some of our most favorite reporters and friends. Politico national correspondent Betsy Woodruff Swan is here. Also joining us, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General and former U.S. Attorney Harry Litman's here. And the executive producer of Showtime's The Circus, the host of the Hell and High Water podcast from The Recount, our friend John Heilman is back. John Heilman, I start with you because there was a time when the why not hold Trump criminally accountable was, oh, it's so novel. Oh, the country will fall apart. Oh, nobody would trust the process. And here we are, the morning, or I guess it's not morning anymore. That's the kind of week I've had. The day after the 4th criminal indictment of Donald Trump.
Yeah, look, Nicole, the unusual has become the usual. The unindictable has become indicted. Perhaps the unconvictable will eventually be convicted. I do think that that the arguments that people have put forward, they're very similar sets of arguments to why you can't indict a sitting president, right? This notion of turning the political, injecting politics in some way into the legal process. You know, that has been a thing that people of goodwill have expressed over many, many decades. Not before Donald Trump, you know, you had people like Eric Holder, a progressive to the core of his bones, expressing those kinds of arguments, the one that you put forward that you kind of summarized a second ago. I think that all of them have fallen away. Not just because seeing him indicted 4 times has made the unusual become unusual, the unthinkable become thinkable, but also because in the process of getting to those 4 indictments, the depth, the scale, the severity of the crimes or the alleged crimes has become apparent to everyone. And so the alternative, letting someone get off scot-free, not have any kind of legal accountability for those things, has come to seem the much greater risk than the risks of that are still there of civic disruption, of not trusting the process, of people who will never believe that Donald Trump was guilty of anything. All of those risks are still out there. They just pale in comparison to the other risks of setting the precedent of a lawless president getting away with it.
Yeah, I mean, Harry, that is often, you know, when you're at the highest levels of the Justice Department or White House, you're also often looking at a bad option and a worse option. And I'm sure that's how some of these folks felt at the end of the day. But it feels like we have answered some questions in this country about whether the rule of law also applies to Donald Trump.
It really does. I mean, it wasn't just bad and worse options. There was a certain unfathomable quality to all of this. And now it's been totally superseded. You know, just look at those 19 pictures. They're as real and visceral and even historic as it gets. This will be the gang that is the 2023 equivalent of all the president's men in Watergate. The DOJ crossed the Rubicon twice. First, when it decided to allege insurrection with some of the marauders, and second, when it decided in the first instance in Mar-a-Lago to charge a former president. And now with Fani Willis, the country, I think, has followed suit. To John's point, more than half the country think he's guilty. More than half think the trial should occur in November. The nitty-gritty of criminal justice has replaced the sort of abstract, could this ever happen inquiry that absorbed us for many months.
Betsy, the conversion that has taken place on Trump's part from being so hysterical and terrified of what Chris Christie describes as the clink of a jail cell, of what Jeff Sessions was on the receiving end of, what reportedly made him cry. I believe Raffensperger at one point was moved to tears as well in their post, which was coming up against Trump's primal fear of just this, being held criminally accountable. There's been a pivot, right? A real embrace of his own criminal status.
Yeah, and part of the reason for that is that Trump's legal strategy and his political strategy in this moment are indistinguishable in the view of Trump and, frankly, in the view of the close advisors surrounding him. There's really just one actual project. For Trump, getting elected in 2024, winning that presidential contest is existential. He's essentially put all his eggs into that one basket. And of course, it's extremely obvious to Trump and the advisors around him that the coverage of his presidential campaign understandably will be defined by the coverage as well of the extraordinary number of legal challenges, both civil and criminal, that he's facing as he runs for re-election. So there's this calculated decision of lean into it, bet on it, try to somehow capitalize on all these indictments, all these lawsuits, all this legal extraordinary turmoil and risk, rather than trying to pretend it all away. For Trump right now, getting elected once more is absolutely essential, and that's why, in his view, politics and the law itself can't be separated.
I know that you're reporting a second to none, and I know that is what they're saying, but I don't totally buy it, Betsy. If that's true, why not be the defendant demanding to exercise his speedy trial rights?
Because at the same time, of course, strategically for them, and again, as you point out, I'm explaining an argument, not advocating for it, not making it myself. At the same time, in the view of Trump and his advisors, if they get this pushed down the road and he gets elected in 2024, then bare minimum, Trump himself would direct Justice Department officials supervising Jack Smith to end those criminal cases against him. As the president, legally, that's a move that he would make. And then on the other side of this Georgia case against Trump himself, you do have something of a potential constitutional crisis were Trump to become president while he was either being prosecuted or had potentially been convicted at a state level. From the standpoint of Trump and his advisors, getting this stuff pushed up until after the 2024 election day, and then hoping that he can win the 2024 election, that's the end game. That's as far ahead as they've been able to game it out.